Welcome back to our channel, Best to Watch. Today we are here to talk about the worst movies of 2021 so far. But before we get started, subscribe to our channel to never miss any updates. So without any further delay, let's get started quickly. It would totally do justice to say that as the whole world is slowly returning to normal, the movie industry is as well, with cinemas welcoming patrons, has finally released a long-delayed blockbuster, expected though. So far, it's not easy to call 2021 a great year for the films, but later this year, both the expected big event and the Prestige Award films were screened. Nevertheless, the first 6 months of the year spanned the entire map in terms of quality, and the studios eventually dumped some of the least exciting and most disastrous releases, especially in the first few months of the year. With that being said, here we have brought you movies that have been the worst and most disappointing since the first half of 2021. Well, it's not without unexploded ordnance later this year, but it will take some serious difficulty to take the throne of this list. Number 1. The Woman in the Window. To no surprise, it's Amy Adams who has provided the best performance so far in this year's bad movie. Amy Adams is AJ attempts her level best to bring class to this insanely messy adaptation of Finn's 2018 novel, of course. Once upon a time, The Woman in the Window was lauded as a solid Oscar candidate, but there were notes that unexploded ordnance would hit the wall after countless delays, reshoot rounds, and Netflix gains. With a surprisingly poor effort by director Joe Wright from Atonement, this psychological thriller is trying to make Hitchcock a monkey, but except for some sharp visuals and the aforementioned work of Adams' games, its tone off-kilter, often unintentionally hilarious train wreck. As the shiny trash proceeds, it's certainly not a boring setting, but it's still an absolute failure of intent. Well, that's actually sad to be true. Number 2. The Hitman's Wife Bodyguard. Undoubtedly, the sequel is more than the surprisingly hassle-free Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, despite wisely offering a charming cast and an extended role for Salma Hayek's cheeky Hitman's wife. You won't be lazy. With a script that looks like it was scribbled on the weekend and a work that seems heavily dependent on improvisation, I have some fun at best. Precisely, the gag rate is very inconsistent and the action is strangely forgotten, but the obvious appeal of the cast prevents it from getting worse. Given that the original was one of the most fun big events of the last few years, even with the addition of castings by Morgan Freeman and Antonio Banderas, this was well below mark. Number 3. Crisis. Guaranteed, Nicholas Jarecki's From Arbitrage latest films had the potential to become opioid-era traffic around the world, but general scripting and slow pace makes it a tremendously sluggish endeavor. However, the core cast members Gary Oldman, Armie Hammer, and Evangeline Lilly are divided into episodes and inconsistent subplots, and the means of stitching them together is not satisfactory remotely. While Oldman in particular is very good here, but while tackling such an urgent issue, the whole feels strangely airless and insubstantial. Also, good luck to understand what Michelle Rodriguez was trying to do with Michelle Rodriguez, as her part was badly scrapped in her short screen time during editing. Number 4. Outside the Wire. When somebody talks about Netflix originals which have no mind-sharing cultural consciousness, they refer to movies like Outside the Wire. On the surface, there is a gorgeous sci-fi action movie that's fascinating, but even with the presence of the man who leads Anthony Mackie's games, it's a soulless, hopelessly stereotyped genre. You may not remember it for more than a week or two. Indeed, it's back in January for a long time, by February, following an android officer played by Mackie, trying to stop the nuclear catastrophe. Despite apparently large budgets and compelling assumptions, it was forgotten. Like many Netflix homebrew genre joints, Outside the Wire feels like a mediocre television season cut into a 2-hour sprint. The possibilities were there, but there weren't enough ideas to maintain compelling functionality. Number 5. Blythe Spirit. Not to hide the reality, but few wanted another large-screen version of Noel Coward's classic 1941 play, Blythe Spirit. That's why this new take meets exceptions. Skillfully casting Judi Dench, Dan Stevens, Isla Fisher, Leslie Mann, and more, this aggressively undertaken comedy is all incorrectly dated and complete. Serves as a reversion to the obsolete and bizarre comedy style. Judi Dench enjoys the opportunity to release, but the script gives little to work with her and her co-stars, and that is a lot of harm without getting in the way of real fun, guaranteed. Sadly, it didn't happen enough in the movie itself, but you can imagine the cast had a good time making it. Number 6. Bliss. One of the most disappointing films to date, Bliss is the latest twisting effort by filmmaker Micah Hill, directed Another Planet, to clash metaphysical concepts with character dramas about drug addiction. In addition to being sold completely wrong, the trailer sold it as a straight sci-fi movie. Bliss is ambitious about its shortcomings, and a messy grasp of its internal logic is more intriguing. It proves to be frustrating. Salma Hayek and Owen Wilson are working hard to support the sloppy screenplay, but given how crazy the film is, it's shocking how often boring things start. Bold swings and mistakes are most often worth more than just lazy filmmaking, but bliss may make you guess the maximum second. Number 7. Mainstream. Francis Ford Coppola's granddaughter, Gia, played by Palo Alto's latest films, has all the elements of a cult classic, even though it's not at all good. Mainstream aims to be a valuable target for influencer culture, but beyond Andrew Garfield's intriguing and undisturbed performance, it's never convincing as written by people who are familiar with social media. They're not. Beyond the deliberately offensive presentation, the Mainstream rarely says anything surprisingly new about what it means to be online in 2021, with Garfield's devoted performance and castmate Maya Hawke's. It's so devoted to the effort that it naturally collapses by the end of the movie. It may not be the worst movie of the year, but it's arguably the most annoying, exhausting, and just sitting and frustrating. Number 8. Infinite. Mark Wahlberg finally got a superhero movie, yet Infinite is a poor jumble, despite the obvious possibility of being directed by Antonio Fuqua from Training Day, The Equalizer. The concept of past life doesn't captivate the audience, but it removes most of the fascinating potential by layering it on top of a generally shiny, action-centric blockbuster. Despite the well-crafted action, Infinite invests very little in compelling stories, and worse, the characters you want to support. It's a thorough blend of about 12 different and excellent sci-fi joints. Chiwetel Ejiofor spends his life as Hamlet's villain, but on the contrary, Wahlberg shows perhaps the least charismatic performance of his entire career. When Infinite was aiming for theatrical release, eventually dumped to Paramount+, it was supposed to kickstart the franchise, but behind this nasty and unintentional laughing effort, it's almost likely it doesn't seem to be. Number 9. Spiral from the Book of Saw. On paper, the Spiral appeared to have been shot in the arms that the Saw franchise was desperately needed, a kind of Saw reboot that brought a new creative voice to the table via Chris Rock. After all, Spiral wastes its timely theme. Police atrocities are strangely uninteresting thriller procedures, with occasional, almost forgotten, flood-on-me explosions. It is studded. Ultimately, the Spiral feels like a Saw movie, then a Saw-branded imitation of The Seven. It's brilliantly to try to move the series in a whole new direction, but the big twist lands with moan-inducing junk. Villains in particular will see fans of the series coming miles away. But given that the film has failed both critically and commercially, it will probably end up in yet another attempt to resume the franchise within a few years. Number 10. Chaos Walking. After years of disassembly on the studio shelves while waiting for stars Daisy Ridley and Tom Holland to reshoot on a busy schedule, Chaos Walking is exactly what everyone expected. With a strange anonymous effort directed by Doug Liman from Edge of Tomorrow, this adaptation of Patrick Ness's fantasy novel Never Letting Go's Knife has caused and disappointed the movie's YA boom. Long after that, it hit the screen and was at least 5 years late. In that sense, it's certainly a fascinating failure, but it never convincingly invests viewers in the world of character. However, even such a strong cast, including Mads Mikkelsen and David Oyelowo, cannot escape the complex and folklore parody of the YA movie. This was all about it, and on that note, that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit like and subscribe to our channel, Best to Watch. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section.